Well, Congress is on recess during the month of August, and that means that many of our elected officials are back in their home districts. Congressman Steve Womack of the 3rd District of Arkansas, no exception to this rule. He now joins us from Talk Business and Politics studio in Springdale, Arkansas. Congressman, thank you for being with us. Let's start with Frank Broyles this morning, the legend in Arkansas sports and overall history, passes away at the age of 92. You had a very close relationship with him. Tell me how you first met Frank Broyles and what did he mean to you? How did he influence you?
Well, I met Coach Broyles when I was in broadcasting many years ago. In fact, about 3 decades ago. That's when I first got to know him from a journalistic perspective, and I've known him ever since. But we've worked closely on a lot of things. Not just coverage of athletics, but most of my relationship with Coach Broyles dates back to the time he was athletic director, and then in the aftermath of his directorship at the University of Arkansas. So my time was spent in talking about quality of life issues in Northwest Arkansas. I was a mayor for a good part of that time and trying to build and grow a destination type community. Razorback athletics was a key part of that, as was public safety and good health care and K-12 education, those kinds of things. And he was always quick and very generous about allowing his time and his persona to be included in this quality of place that we know now as Northwest Arkansas. And that's what I remember him for the most part by, not necessarily the things he did as a coach, although that's legendary, but we forget how much he did after he patrolled those sidelines at the University of Arkansas. In building the university and in creating a quality of life, using that Razorback, that Razorback image and persona, the things he did to elevate our region, he ranks right up there with the likes of the Waltons and the Tysons and the Hunts of the world. You have to add the name Broyles into that mix because of what he brought to the table.
I absolutely agree with you 100%, and I know that we will be talking more about him and his legacy in the months and years to come. Let's shift gears to some things happening on the national stage. Let's talk about Charlottesville, Virginia, and the aftermath of all that, which has really dominated national political conversation all week long here. I know you, like so many others, condemn this white nationalist movement that is out there and a lot of the violence and the rhetoric that surrounds all that. Yet there are a lot of people that have been very critical of the president and how he has handled this whole situation. Do you feel like the president has failed to lead on this?
Well, I think he's been beat up quite a bit, and there's been kind of a piling on sort of mentality. Yeah, could he have handled it differently and better? Of course he can, and we can armchair quarterback this all day long. When his first statement came out and he just basically condemned bigotry and hatred and all those kinds of things without calling anybody out, I thought he made a pretty good defense of that, that we didn't know all the facts, the investigation was unfolding. But look, it was clear, Roby, that this whole thing was instigated by a movement by people referring to themselves as white nationalists or white supremacists, even representatives and people affiliated with the KKK involved. I mean, we knew that going in, and I thought that would have been a very easy thing. Those folks would have been very easy to single out in the initial draft, but the fact that it didn't happen, the fact that the president used some restraint because of the investigation, I'm okay with that. Doubling down on some of that, some of those comments in the Tuesday news conference, not so much so. I think this we can all agree on. There's no place, and it matters not if you're the President of the United States or just Joe Sixpack out here, there's no place in this country for the type of hatred and vitriol that is spewed by people who claim to be white supremacists or white nationalists, anti-Semitic, KKK, in any other said organization. No place at all. You can't defend it. The president can't defend it. I can't defend it and would never try. This is not who we are as Americans. But there just cannot be a place in the national discussion that would in any way, shape, or form condone, permit, or tolerate what is spewed by those kinds of organizations. And I'm deeply concerned about the divisions in our country that thinks something like that is okay. We've got to be able to put this down, and the president really needs to lead in that regard.
Let's talk about things happening and not happening in Congress. You've had some harsh commentary, both publicly and privately, for this GOP-led Congress. Lots of things to still get done in this last quarter of the year. You've got health care, you've got taxes, you've got infrastructure, you've got the budget, you've got the debt ceiling coming up. That's a pretty big agenda for the final quarter of the year. You have said in a recent Politico article, I don't know that I can defend that we haven't done more. Why, with Republicans in charge of all levers of Congress, why are we not seeing more action being done? And give me a little bit more description of your frustration.
Okay, well, first of all, when we use the word we or Congress, we paint with a broad brush. That's two chambers. That's House and Senate. And everything I said was geared to the Congress as a whole. I'm going to defend the House of Representatives. Yes, and I'm on the Budget Committee, and I'm an appropriator, as you know. In both cases, we have passed, we've referred, we have marked up and reported to the House the 2018 budget. And we can come back to that in a little more detail if you want to. We have reported to the House of Representatives each of the 12 appropriation bills. We have passed our version of repeal and replace of Obamacare. Like it or not like it. It's imperfect. It kept that discussion alive, and we needed the Senate to do its part so that we could come to conference and work out our differences in what kind of health care program, what kind of health care legislation that we would want in replacing of Obamacare. And then looking at the regulatory reform that the House and the Senate have been able to accomplish, several signed into law based on the Congressional Review Act. So let me, Roby, brag a little bit on the House of Representatives. But we're one half of this 1/3 of government. We've got to have help in the Senate. The problem in the Senate is more about their rules. You know, they have a 60-vote filibuster rule to invoke cloture on any substantive matter that requires, that allows for a debate in a filibuster on any specific issue. You got to have 60 votes to break that down. We have 52 Republicans, and we really can't hold all of our 52 Republicans. So we've got to get Democrats on the other side of the aisle in the Senate to work with us on these matters, and that becomes very problematic in pursuing the agenda that President Trump and Republicans in the House and the Senate would like to go toward. So rules of the Senate become very problematic for what we're doing. But again, I will say this, the House has been very busy. We've been very active, a little chagrined that we haven't taken the budget and the appropriations issues all the way to the finish line. We could have done that the week that we began the August recess. But when we come back after Labor Day, I'm confident that Speaker Ryan and the leadership team will put these items on the floor, give us a chance to move them through, send them to the Senate, and then we'll just hope and pray that the Senate will take those up and we can get them across the finish line, maybe to conference, and eventually to the desk of the president. And that's how the legislative process works. Too often, people want to paint members of the House with that broad brush and say, you guys haven't gotten anything accomplished. Well, in fact, we have gotten a lot of things accomplished, but we do have to have our partners in the Senate to work with us.
I'm going to send this interview over to Mitch McConnell's office as soon as we can get it put together. So.
I hope you will.
All right, last question for you. You are running for re-election for Congress. I just kind of want to get you on the record and make sure that we can count on you putting your name on the dotted line next year. Are you up for re-election?
Well, my plan is to seek re-election. I've not made any bones about that. You can look at our activities, but my first and foremost job, Roby, at this stage of the game is to serve the people of the 3rd District, and that's not just a lot of rhetoric. I'm serious about that. We've got to continue to take the issues that are important to our country and bring them to the doorstep of the American public and get there, let them weigh in on the issues and help me understand what the heartbeat of America is and what the pulse of the 3rd District is, so we can be better informed members of the legislative branch when we go back. And so my plan is to run for re-election, but I'm going to continue to do everything I can do to be responsible to the duties of my job, which includes the legislative piece, but also includes the constituent service piece and everything else that we do in between.
The mild-mannered, always quietly and understated Congressman Steve Womack from the 3rd District. Always good to visit with you, Steve.
Thanks, Roby. Good to be with you.
All right.